Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Jay and Brian Show. We are back on the air with a really good friend of ours, Chris Kirkpatrick. Jay and Brian welcome. Show, of course, powered by My City Lender Home Loans, a refreshingly simple way to get a home loan. We'll have links down in the description for those of you who are listening who are in the housing market. I know there's not a lot of people in the housing market right now, but
at the moment,
you never know. But we're excited about having Chris on the show again. Chris, welcome.
Awesome, man. Well,
welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. You know, I last time I was here, some of the top performing TikTok videos I've ever done were shorts from our last conversation.
Really?
Yep.
That's amazing. And that was about a year ago, right?
A little more than a year ago, probably.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I've had a couple video clips from our last conversation that had, like, one of them had almost 2 million views.
2 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's pretty cool.
So
if you're watching the Jay and Brian Show for the first time on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. And if you like it, definitely smash that subscribe button. Chris is the reason why we learned about doing shorts in the first place. Like, he's the reason why we formulated the Jay and Brian Show the way we did and put those shorts out. And we've had a lot of good play on those as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it only makes sense, right? Like, if you're going to create content, you might as well multi-purpose it and create more value. And not everybody has the attention span to watch an hour-long interview or
and we have learned from one of the best in the industry.
Well, thanks, guys.
So Chris is he's joining us from LIFE180, which is tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. So LIFE180 is an acronym. It's living intentionally for excellence. The 180 is about turning your life around. The reason we came up with that name is because, unfortunately, as you guys see, most people's personal finances are not in alignment with where they want to be. We live in the most prosperous world in the history of prosperous country in the history of the world. And yet 95% of people are reaching retirement and not able to maintain their standard of living on a guaranteed basis. Like, think about that. It's mind numbing. And we're living right now in 2023. We're coming through, the greatest bull run that we've ever seen in the market. So as we go through these cycles, like, what happens is people get this false sense of security, right? And
we've been talking about this lately. Yeah, there's a lot of that.
For sure.
A lot of false sense of security.
100%. And that is the natural cycle of things. This happens constantly over and over. And so what happens is the market, 2008 happens, 2007, 8, 9, right? And then people are scared to death. And so that creates this mindset and fortitude of wanting to create but people tighten up and people act more responsible. But it's amazing how short-term thinking we are as a species, right? Because by 2015, everybody just forgot 2008 ever happened, right? And so, we're in this situation where it's like, all right, people feel really good because 401ks, there's more people with $1 million in their 401k than ever before. There's people have more equity in their home than ever before. All the things going on with interest rates going up and all this stuff and inflation and whatever. And we'll talk about all that, I'm sure, as we go here. But but at the end of the day, this false sense of security is all based on the fact that we have this bull run. And the bull run was based on kind of, I would argue, fictitious kind of economic, not fictitious, they were real, but manipulated economic environment.
Well, especially the rates.
Low rates.
Were kept low for a long period of time.
Totally. But it's beyond low rates. I mean, it's quantitative easing 1, 2, 3 trillions of dollars printed, mortgage deferrals, right? Deferment of payments on mortgages, on cars, on credit cards, the stimulus money getting printed. And people don't realize it, but money printing, everybody thinks money printing causes inflation. No, money printing, when it hits Main Street, causes inflation. All the money printing in the QE that happened early in 2010 through 2020, that was all going into the coffers of the banks, and it was utilized as reserves, and it gave more financial stability so they could loan. But it's now kind of hitting the place where, when they created this last round of stimulus and the PPP program and the ERTC program and all this money that they're now doing, these new programs that are taking and printing the trillions of dollars, it's going right into the economy. People in COVID times, right? Like when they printed the PPP money and then the stimulus checks for everybody. That just went right to people who were sitting at home with nothing else to do, and they fixed up their backyard. They bought new flat screen TVs. They did all these things, and it boosted the economy. That's what caused the inflationary problems that we're having, and you don't get, nothing is free in this world. There's no free lunches, guys. Like when you deal with this stuff, and you if you're willing to, take a bite of the forbidden apple, you're gonna pay the price. Right. That's the way I see this. And so, it's just, but I know a lot of people are like super negative and think it's going to be doomsday in a way, like, because go online, it's disgusting, right? The fear mongering that happens, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of it right now.
It's nuts. And like some of the points are warranted, but like the end game is not, right? Like a lot of people worried about the devaluation of the dollar and, the world's reserve currency status lost. Like, okay, maybe long term there's some risk there, but like from a short term perspective, and when I say short term, I mean like 10 years, the odds of that happening are like so insignificant. Like it's not even worth really considering. But everybody freaks out about it, because there's all these people talking about Bitcoin and all this stuff, and it's like we got a ways to go before that's going to be taken over, And so I don't know. I just look, the market is cyclical. We gotta, like what we're going through now feels extreme. It is extreme, but it's no different than, you go back to 1979, 1980 and 81. It's very similar.
It definitely feels like we're right back there.
I do wonder though, if we are going to go into a recession. I think we were talking about that earlier. Yeah. You seem, Chris, you're in the camp of we are probably going to go into a recession at some point.
Yeah.
It seems. But I just wonder if this has staying power. I mean, the dynamics right now, you have affordability. That's kind of what's mostly on my mind right now when it comes to housing is affordability, and it's at an all-time low. And yet with rates high, there's still it's high rates, low affordability combining.
We're losing a whole
first-time home buyers.
Of buyers, yeah.
First-time home buyers completely priced out of the market
at this point. Yeah. How does
affordability get turned around?
Well, so like, and let's talk about that a little bit, because like affordability is saying, all right, if you look at the market, and I know you guys know this, but for everybody watching that doesn't understand it fully, is like as the market, inflation happened, right? And housing prices went through the roof. I think if you guys are like me, when the pandemic first happened, I expected the market to tank.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I think everybody did, right? But a combination of the government programs and mortgage deferrals, and then the fact that, rates were still low, people just kind of had this demand, and nobody wanted to sell their house though, because nobody wanted anybody walking through their house, and you remember that? Like it was.
Yeah. So what is happening right now at this moment is almost what we had all anticipated was going to happen in 2020
during the pandemic.
Yeah. Yep. Which didn't really happen.
Well, because they kicked the can down the road.
Right. Yeah.
That's all they did. Yeah. Like, and that was like, you could have just, anybody, you don't need a crystal ball to see that this was going to happen, right? Because it's economics. There's no free lunch. You can't just do this stuff. You can delay the pain. You can, defer the consequences. But at the end of the day, right now, when we have interest rates going up, we still have a supply problem, right? Like there's not enough people willing to sell their house, because you got a lot of people like me and probably you guys that have their interest rates in the 2.5 to 3.5 to 4% range.
Yep.
Never going to get rid of that asset, right? Like your asset is as much the low rate of a mortgage as it is the house itself, right? Like, because you can just turn around and rent that out. Like, because like for me, my wife and I are dealing with this right now. We're in the process of making a move, and we're going to and it's not a move, but it's a short-term thing. In a normal economic environment, we'd probably just sell our house and take the equity out and go from there, and just like re-enter the market maybe a year or two down the road when we come back, right? But now, like the fact that we have a 3% mortgage impacts our behavior, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and so we are an example of a house that would be on the market that now is not. I love
how you are saying this, though, how the mortgage itself, the rate you have on this low rate mortgage is just as important as the investment of the real estate itself.
Yeah. I mean, so, and so for me, that just comes from the perspective that I just look at, cash flow is everything.
So do you think that the new buyers for today, do you think that they're going to have are they having the same outlook today as what you just said? Because it's different because you have this, right? And that is what your asset is attached to, right? You've got this super low rate that's attached to your asset. Therefore, just,
well,
so my question is, like, if the buyers of today don't really have that to consider, then all it is a hope for the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging, right? I think we're living in a time right now where there's so much uncertainty. There's uncertainty about what is the market going to do, where the rate's going to go. Do we have inflation under control or do we not? The government debt's $33 trillion and it's going up by $4.5 trillion a year, like at unprecedented rates. We've got the war in Israel and the Palestine thing going on, that whole Gaza Strip deal that I try to not think about as if I don't have to, but this is all stuff that is a real deal, and I just know that my phone, my Google feed on my phone, even though I try not to click on anything, keeps doing like, is the Israel war going to spill over into Ukraine? Is this going to happen? Is World War III coming? Like all this stuff. And it's like
seeing the same stuff.
You know what I mean? And I don't click on it because I don't even want to think about that because I live through the lens of like, I know what I can control, and that's certainly not it. You know what I mean? And so I want to keep my energy and my heart in areas that I know I have influence over, and that's not it. And so and I think, the challenge is, though, I guess the point is the uncertainty that is created by the whole world that we live in. I think our politicians are incompetent, when it comes to this stuff. That's just my opinion. That's not a right-left thing. That's just a across-the-board thing. And
competence is one thing. I mean, that's part of it. It's incentive structure. What is a politician's incentive? Well, it's to spend as much money as they can on their constituents so that they continue to get the votes and maintain their seats and all that stuff.
Yeah, you could certainly say there's a lot of like moral hazards built into our
But how connected are they really to what's going on at the ground level? Like what's really going on with
not at all
and their situations? And
when's the last time we had a councilman walk into our office and ask us how we're doing on the ground here?
Right? Who? Well, so the affordability thing, though, I think what's going to happen is things are going to keep going well, because if you understand like what's driving the lack of affordability right now, it's the fact that interest rates keep going up, and Jerome Powell is getting here and he's looking at the unemployment rates. And as long as inflation, because remember, everybody's like, oh, inflation's going down. It's still double where it should be, kind of quote unquote should be, which I think having a target of 2% is still ridiculous. That means if you don't understand inflation, and the rule of 72 at a 2% inflation rate, that means your purchasing power gets cut in half every 26 years, right? So at a 4% rate, that's every 13 years.
Much more reasonable as far as the target goes. Yeah.
Right. And so,
and we're sitting at like 3.7 right now?
It's 3.7, and gas prices were up. Now they're kind of coming back down a little bit. Like there's things, but at the end of the day, we're still looking like inflation is higher than where it needs to be. So as long as inflation is higher than where it needs to be, Jerome Powell has an obligation to keep raising rates, because that is the nature of our fiat currency model, right? The government is going to, the Federal Reserve is going to keep raising rates until they get inflation where it needs to be, so long as employment stays good.
Everything else stays.
Right? Because don't forget, inflation is just a function of our spending as a nation, right? Like, as long as people can keep buying things, I got news for you. The economy, how much money you're making, the job rates, everything. All that would go away if everybody would just say, listen, I'm not going to spend my money. I'm going to invest my money. And I'm not going to go buy flat screen TVs. And I'm just going to be a more responsible steward of my stuff. And I'm going to take the money that I'm earning right now, I'm going to prepare for the rainy day. I'm going to build my reserve account, my emergency fund. I'm going to, because I see this coming, that would accelerate this process. And it would actually probably reduce inflation faster, because the better consumer behavior would be enacted. Less money would be spending. The CPI would go down.
But we're starting to see that now.
Are we?
I think on a forced basis, yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, but there's a difference, right? Now they're being forced.
This is not a voluntary action. This is a forced action as a result of X.
But that's what happens, because what's going to happen is if you don't do it voluntarily, like this, Peter Schiff always says this. People and Harry Dent says the same thing. Like, people always think, economists always think they're smarter than the economy, but they're not, right? Like, if let's just take all of us. Like, let's just assume that we have the choice of saying, hey, we're gonna voluntarily buckle down when times are good. You know, even though they're not really good, they're kind of fictitiously good. They're manipulated with policy to allow it to feel better than it really is. And so we can take that and we can enjoy it and live high on the hog and do our vacations and buy new cars and buy new TVs and redo our backyard and do all these things. Or we could be responsible with it and prepare for what's inevitably coming, which nobody does. But so we can.
But we should be, because a rainy day is going to come at some point.
Sure. Yeah, but cyclical. Should is not, is not human behavior, right? And so what winds up happening is the government, and this is the Federal Reserve policy, and this is the inflationary policy, is that they say, all right, inflation is going up because you guys are spending money when you shouldn't be. That's really what's happening. Mm-hmm. And so they go, we're going to keep raising rates until it gets to the point where we break you. And you're no longer able to live this life that you have been accustomed to living. And you will then slow down, whether it's based out of fear or obligation or necessity, because you don't have that capital and you got to pay your bills and, all this stuff. And so that's what will then slow down. It's not the high interest rates that shrinks inflation. It's the fact that when interest rates go up, affordability comes down, mm-hmm. and eventually you break and you stop spending money, prices correct to where they need to go. And then, and typically I call it the pendulum effect, right? Because like if everything should be centered on the pendulum, we've gone way too far to one side with cheap money, and affordability was too good and money was too easy. And so you don't correct it and get back to center by making it where it should be. You've got to overcorrect and break the system, so then it can kind of come back. And unfortunately, we never stay in the middle. The pendulum swings from one side to the other.
So if they're smart enough, and by they I mean Jerome Powell and the Fed, if they're smart enough to know, they're brilliant economists, right, to know that they've got to be painful with the rate increases.
Yeah.
How come they weren't smart enough to see that we were keeping rates artificially low for so long? And then on top of that, you have the whether it was Trump, whether
mm-hmm.
again, not right or left thing,
I don't know if you could,
the federal government pumping trillions of dollars in stimulus along the way, on top of keeping rates artificially low.
Yeah, and that isn't one specific administration.
No, it's not.
That you can pin it on, because this has been rolling and rolling.
But my point
started
is
with Bush and Obama. I mean, like, you can go back to Reagan, actually.
Why weren't they smart enough to slowly be ratcheting rates up as they went along, and didn't hold them at 3 to all of a sudden have to go, okay, boom, 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 boom.
Well, they tried, and that's the thing. If you look at 2015 and 2018, they tried, and this should be the indicator. They tried to bump the federal funds rate twice in 2015 and 2018, and each time they did it, the market just took it in the, you know what.
Therefore, the quantitative easing period kicks in. And now, so what we're seeing is that we're going to be in this quantitative tightening season.
Yeah.
For what we've been hearing and reading. It's probably going to take us through all of next year and possibly into 2025.
Or longer.
Longer.
Or who knows? I mean, and the worst part, so I interviewed Harry Dent. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He wrote a book called The Demographic Cliff. He's very negative on the economy, but he's not negative just for the purpose of being negative. He used to be bullish, in the 80s. But he's a demographics guy. So he's a cycles guy. And I think cycles are absolutely, a relevant thing. A lot of people think he's a bit of a dinosaur, and he's been kind of beating the same drum for a decade, and okay, that's fair. But a lot of what he's saying, the principles of it, the government's done a good job of kicking the can down the road and doing monetary printing and, quantitative easing and like just loose money and low rates and all these things that, that have been able to fight against the demographics, demographic shift that we have. But the bottom line is, like, eventually you got to pay the piper, you know, and there's no free lunch. And so his conversation around everything is that from 2024 to 2028 is supposed to be a demographic economic winter, meaning that, and that's not like, you know, Game of Thrones, winter's coming kind of like evil, but it's just saying, hey, this is a time where things kind of flatline, things get really like hard because we have a contraction from the institution of our government, you know, in the 1700s to today. We've only known expansion. We've only known growth, right? Our economy is only expanded, and our economy is driven by people, right? Like, so it only goes to show that, you know, as we have more people, that's really what the government, when they picked a 2% inflation rate, they're saying, hey, our population is going to expand at about 2%. So that's kind of a good number, right? That's really what it comes down to. And so for the first time ever, and in this book, he talks about it, is we are going to have a demographic contraction. Like, and this is the challenge, because we live in this time right now where we've,
as a whole
in the country, we will like, so, and we've been going through it. We've allowed immigration to make up for the lack in birth rates, the lack of expansion and all that stuff. But now, even with immigration, we're going to have fewer people as the boomers are dying off, right? As they pass on, we're going to have fewer people. So not only do we have this whole world that we're in right now, you know, where all the things that we've been talking about, and this kind of like period, the end of this cycle from an economic policy perspective, but now we're also ending the end of a demographic cycle. And when you see, think about it this way, everybody's talking about the supply problem. Boomers are now passing on, and their vacation homes and their second places and like all the things that they have, they're passing on, and there's more of them than there are people to replace them in their peak spending years to be able to afford it. So you know, like that's a problem. You know, now then you could argue that like people, you know, organizations like BlackRock are buying all the homes up, and they're not selling them, and they're not going to sell them, and you know, so that may counter it.
Isn't there going to be a major wealth transfer over the next 10, 15 years as baby boomers pass on, and they transfer all that wealth to their heirs? And what effect will that?
It's a big.
What would that look like?
Huge, and that's a big passion point for me with Life 180. And you know, we do a lot of work in the life insurance space, right? And so how you handle that transition of wealth, and you know, how you manage, you know, trusts and estate planning and stuff of that nature is a big deal. Because think about it this way: there's a story of different families in the world of you know, the Vanderbilt family, right? Everybody knows who the Vanderbilt family was. Cornelius Vanderbilt was he was the wealthiest person the face of this earth has ever seen. I don't know, like everybody knows of the Rockefellers now. Everybody knows of the Rothschild family. Most people have heard of the Vanderbilts because of the sheer success that Cornelius Vanderbilt had in building his empire. But the Vanderbilt family is basically broke today. Like literally, so I did this research study on them. By 1971, they had their Vanderbilt family reunion, and there was only one millionaire in the group. Think about that.
Wow.
Like going from being worth the equivalent of $234 billion in today's money, if you inflation adjusted net worth, from Cornelius Vanderbilt in the 1800s to 1971, only one millionaire. Like, wow, that's an atrocity.
It's mind-boggling.
So when we talk about transfers of wealth, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because you say, hey, like, what does that even mean? If you don't structure it right, if you don't have trust and rules in place, the kids who didn't earn it, they're just going to be irresponsible with it.
I guess I'm asking that from a short time frame perspective, you know, say 10, 20 years, right? I mean, the expectation is that plenty of irresponsible heirs will just spend it, but they'll spend it. They'll put it in the economy.
Sure.
They'll maybe buy houses with it.
Maybe. I mean, you know, but typically speaking, they're going to inherit the houses. They'll probably inherit those houses, and they'll look to sell those. And so is there really any? So remember, it's all about value creation. Like if we're not creating more value than we're, you know, taking from the world, then that's a principle that's not negotiable. Like that,
right.
You have to have a value creation structure. And the problem is, like, typically speaking, these second and third and fourth generation, people that are living a certain lifestyle and have been raised in a certain environment with a certain way of being that never really created that value. They don't understand. They're entitled. And that's not judgment. That's human nature, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just the way it goes. And so I think like we're coming through the greatest generation. If you look at their cycles go in multiple phases, right? Like, so we could say, hey, every 8 to 12 years, the economy goes through this cycle because of short-term buyer behavior and
right.
the what we've talked about so far. And okay, that's great. But there are also larger cycles, and we have the greatest generation from, that was raised in the Great Depression era. And so they knew nothing but pain and hardship and like just grinding to try to get through life, right? And so they were the most disciplined generation, and they were the most like hardworking. We're not going to let that happen. And so they built it up. And so their kids saw the work ethic, and their kids were the boomers, right?
Yep.
And so their kids saw that, and then they worked hard, but at the same time they felt prosperity. And so they felt comfortable to be like, well, let's create families, right? Like, let's do that. And so they expanded. And so that then perpetuated, but a couple generations removed, now the kids they have, they're like, whatever, like life is just good. The 80s and 90s, baby, let's go, right? Like, and that's what's happened. And so now, if you look at it, and I just did this, like, it's all about expectation management and like just knowing the cycle. And I think people in the economy, we look around, and I think if you talk to financial advisors or, people on Main Street about, what do you need to do to be successful with your money in retirement and like reach your financial goals and be free and like, be able to be financially independent and, take your hard-earned working income, save enough of that money, put enough of it aside, prepare for retirement and reach that goal and be able to maintain your standard of living at whatever age you want, whether it's 65 or 55 or 70 or like whatever it looks like to you. It's the question is, and this is why I named my company Life 180, living intentionally for excellence. Like how intentional are you living around that and making decisions around the right expectations to accomplish the goals that you say you want to live. And unfortunately, most people just don't think like that, and the challenge that we're living in now is like, if you look at the expectations that everybody has, it's out of whack with reality because everybody's like, oh, if I were to go down the street, if I asked you guys, like, what's the rate of return that you can expect?
On what?
On like a long-term portfolio investment.
4 or 5%.
Okay.
7 to 10.
Okay. So you're super conservative and I like where your head's at. 7 to 10 is totally the answer that you get.
I think that's what you would get.
100%. That 8% is what most financial advisors are taught. And so my response is always why, right? Like, why do you believe that? And why is that what's being taught? Why?
My question is when? When has anyone received this 7 to 10 number that we've been told or higher?
Right.
When?
Yeah.
I can tell you that we have not received that.
Well, because your parents did though. That's the reality.
They probably did.
They did. And so here's the numbers. Like this is the crazy part. From 1929 to 1979, the real return in the S&P 500 was about 4.5%. Okay? From 1980 to 1999, the real return was 13.3%. Mm-hmm. From 2000 to today, the real return is about 4.4%. So outside of this 20-year window, which ironically is when our parents were going to, were working and saving, and 401k was created in 1980 as well, and like started to become a thing. And so that's where more people started investing money in the markets. And so that's naturally going to expand the growth of the market because small supply, more demand, more dollars coming in. That's just the way it works. So it's no wonder that this happened, but we literally have a 20-year period out of the last 100 years where it's been a certain way, but they're using that as a crutch to like back up all their other numbers. But like historically speaking, outside of that 20-year window, relying on an 8% expectation is just delusional. So
where do you go? And for us in the industry, we point people to real estate.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Because real estate's historically been one of the greatest returns if you're going to make an investment. Yeah. in time in yourself and investing in your family, and everybody's got to have a place to live. But we would normally point people to real estate, maybe more than the market.
100% more than the market for me. I would never put money in the market personally. And that's just a value thing. Like, so my biggest thing is this, is like, I used to be really polarizing about my opinion about the market is evil, you should never do it. And like real estate all the way or business all the way, right? Like, so I used to be very opinionated. And what I've really come to realize for me is that there's no right or wrong. It's just, is it right or wrong for you? Right? And as long as your expectations are in alignment, and my biggest thing is like, is your money in alignment with your values and beliefs? Period. Right? Your values and your beliefs. I mean, we're all kind of in alignment here, right? So like, that's easy. But let's just assume Brian, didn't share those values and beliefs. And so what I would say is, hey, Brian, what do you believe about taxes? And what do you believe about the government debt and inflation? Like, how worried about those things are you?
Pretty worried.
Yeah. So you say you're worried. Now,
how do you protect against that?
If you were asking most people that question and you ask them and they go, yeah, I'm pretty worried. Most people are going to say that, right? And if I said, what's your degree of confidence about the government figuring this out and making it better?
Very low.
Very low. And most people are going to say that. Fair enough.
Yep.
But then when we talk to people and be like, hey, where's your retirement savings?
So what are you doing?
Where's your money right now? Where are you saving? And what are most people? 401k, IRA. Boom. Those are the two biggest places where people from a tax perspective have their money. And the challenge is that's where it's most at risk if those are the things you're concerned about. Think about that.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, people don't realize it, but our subconscious minds, and this is something I've learned a lot with personal work I've done this year, is that our subconscious minds are so powerful, right? That there are things happening you don't even realize are happening in the way that you're behaving, the way that you're making your decisions. And, like at the end of the day, if your subconscious doesn't believe you're going to be successful, you're not going to do what you need to do. And so like, if your money is in 401ks and IRAs and you don't believe in the government and the thing, now, if you're, like a huge Hillary Clinton fan and like, you believe, and like no judgment, like if that's your thing and you believe in the government or whatever, then I'm not saying you're going to win, but at least you're doing what you believe in. So you're going to give it everything you got.
Okay.
Right?
That makes sense.
That's the challenge. Yep. And so the reason we have a saving problem in this country, the reason that we have an investing problem and that people are not doing the right thing is because what's being taught is not in alignment with most people's values and beliefs. So what we have is like a bunch of people that are confused about they don't know what. And so the natural consequence of that is like, well, this just doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel right. And so I might as well just enjoy life while I can. Right? Mm-hmm. And they just
and they'll just invest as little as possible.
Invest as little as possible.
The least amount that I can commit to this, that's what I'm going to do.
Well, everybody wants a shortcut, and there's no shortcut. But like,
and I'm not going to look at it either.
Right?
Yeah. I'm not going to look at it. I'm going to tell my friends, don't look at theirs either.
Totally.
And totally. You see this, like we see this. Like, so what's your plan?
Well, so my plan is like, what I say to people is like, we need to stop focusing on rate of return first and foremost. We need to think about financial structure, financial design. I just created this new thing. It's called the hierarchy of financial needs. And it's like 5 different steps. And it's, first step is cash flow. Most people, their greatest need is not, I need to save more or invest more. It's, I need to make more money. let's be real with where we are right now.
Yes.
I need to make more money. And like you can try to go invest more. I promise anybody watching this video, I promise you, I don't care how much money you make, unless you're like really well-to-do. But if you're making $250,000 or less and you're watching this video, your need is not to get better rates of return on your money. It's to make more money. And I promise you, if you're saving 10%, if you're following the traditional financial strategies that are taught to us in this country, go to school, get a job, invest 10% of your money into a 401k or qualified account, and that's what you're doing, and you're trying to chase an 8% rate of return, and you're taking the risk on that comes with that to be successful, you have so much higher degree of success by just focusing on creating 10% more cash flow in your life and just saving that with no risk than you do getting
Agreed.
Right? Like
Agreed.
That's it. So we need to stop thinking about trying to chase these big rates of return. And the biggest lie in the financial space, in my opinion, is the younger you are, the more risk you can take, because the younger you are, the less risk you have to take because you have time and compounding on your side. Like
100% agree.
Yeah, that's a
100%.
really great way to put that.
Yeah, and you look back at, like what we were doing in our 20s, and man, I look back at that and I say, man, if I could have just done this, if I could have done this consistently when I was 20 or 21 years old and saved
If only I had started investing when I was 18 or 20 years old. So what would you say to an 18 or 20-year-old today then?
Save. Don't take risks.
And let it compound.
Save, compound. And so here's the deal. When we look at financial structure, everybody thinks they're investing when they put money into a 401k and I don't care, Bitcoin, crypto,
whatever it is,
even real estate. If you are not setting your financial structure up so you're saving, so you have a financial foundation to deal with the downswings in the market cycles. If I don't care how much money you have right now, if you're leveraged to the point where when the economy goes down, like where we are now, when lending gets restricted, when rates go up, when asset prices start to come down, the fact is most people are leveraged, right? All companies are leveraged. And so as interest rates go up, what's going to happen is real estate prices are going to come down, stock prices are going to come down, asset prices across the board are going to come down. So people are, like we said at the beginning, have this false sense of security. They're going to wake up and be like, oh my gosh, like,
what do we have here?
I'm not. So, and this is the problem. So let's think about it. Most people have about a 40-year window, right, to make money and be productive human beings and ultimately plan for retirement. And then if you're not successful at the end of that 40 years, you're in trouble, right? And so what happens is we just came through this great bull run. Everybody feels successful. A lot of people have been successful. But if your financial structure through that success isn't set up, you're still exposed. And so you need to make, and what I mean by financial structure, I mean, do you have a foundation of safe, liquid, accessible, guaranteed capital that cannot lose money in a market downturn? If you don't, you're not an investor. You are simply a speculator that is enjoying a good run. And when it turns, speculators get smashed harder than anybody else. And that's why we have this world, this country, this nation of people that are coming up short, because what happens is, we go through these cycles. People feel like they're doing really well during the bull runs, during the upticks, and so they don't do the conservative things of saving. Why would I save money? Why would I put money in an account?
Just keep coming in.
Yeah. Why would I put money in an account and do this thing, Chris, that you're telling me to do when I, the opportunity cost, I'm losing money of not getting my 10%, my 15%.
Yeah.
It's like, that's great, but it's not real. Like none of it is real unless you build a foundation. And unless you can, weather the swings. And if you don't have your foundation built, you're not going to be able to weather the swings.
And I wanted to get into this in your intro, actually, but then we blazed right through it.
Okay, cool.
But your business is booming.
Yeah,
Chris,
totally.
like Life180,
Huge.
like your subscription subscriber count on YouTube has blown up. Just for anybody that's watching this video, Chris's channel has really blown up. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's Life180 on YouTube. It's great. So how does that translate with not only the people that are inside the life insurance industry, but other people that are looking to invest in other things that maybe aren't the S&P or are not a 401k or are not real estate? So
this is where whole life insurance, I think, comes in, right, for you. And that's we should mention that's Chris's business. That's the YouTube channel is a really cool part of his whole enterprise, but whole life insurance is a business. So I have my question for you, because what we were just talking about, it sounds great.
Sure.
And it sounds smart and responsible and durable and sustainable. Why does Dave Ramsey not like whole life insurance if he is a take good calculated financial risks, manage your finances intentionally and responsibly? Why is there?
He's a big fan.
Why is there a disconnect there? Because
he's a big fan.
I agree with you completely.
Of the indexed, like just a low cost, low risk, index fund.
But that's speculating versus real saving or investing, like we've been talking about.
Dave Ramsey is really good at helping people that have no financial understanding and helping people restrict and be disciplined to stay to accomplish a certain minimal goal, right? Mm-hmm. Be debt free. You're never going to get rich listening to Dave Ramsey. Like, so it's not that, once again, it's not, is Dave Ramsey good or bad? Is it good or bad for you? You know, and the person who loves Dave Ramsey is going to hate me. Like, that's just the reality, right? Because Dave Ramsey's conversation is like, no, you should just go, no debt, no credit cards. Credit cards are evil. Even though you can, like, if you're sophisticated and you manage them properly, you can get good points and there's tax-free benefits and like all the different things that we all probably understand, right? Like, so Dave Ramsey would say, no, you're too stupid. You're not disciplined enough. Credit cards are evil, right? You're too stupid to understand your money. You're not smart enough. You should just give your money to somebody else and let them control your future. Like, to me, I have a fundamental problem with that construct, right? Like, and so, but I also understand there are some people that need that, you know. Mm-hmm. If you need that, turn this off right now and go watch Dave Ramsey because I am not for you. You know what I mean? Like, and that's okay. And so like, yeah, I like to rip on Dave every now and then. And because there's such a polarizing like barrier between us and the way we view the world. Mm-hmm. But the ironic hypocritical part about Dave Ramsey is he made all his money as an entrepreneur and building business,
right?
Not investing in mutual funds, Dave. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so the level of hypocrisy and arrogance that I see with him bugs me, but like, we'll leave that for another time. But like,
it seems like it.
So it bugs me, but
we really want to know how you feel.
I know. Well, I don't really ever hold things back, but like, but the reason, like, I don't understand why he doesn't like whole life insurance. I think maybe, like anything else, it's probably emotional because there are ways that whole life insurance is misrepresented.
I was going to say, to clarify some of that, the whole life of the 70s and 80s is different than the whole life of the 2020s.
It didn't need to be. It was just now it's gotten a little more flexible. Companies are a little more intentional about the marketing and the ability to market the different designs of policies. You could do it back then. It just wasn't understood yet, right? And so nobody did it, right? Now there's a wave of people that really understand it, and we're coming through this economic environment where, I mean, think about it this way. Like, I was just ironically on the way here having a battle in my chat, my comment section of one of my YouTube videos about Dave Ramsey, actually. And this guy is like trying to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about, because I did this like short clip. It was about don't invest in bonds or CDs, do this instead. And it was talking about putting your money into a whole life policy. And this guy's like, don't, period, do, period, this, period. Like, and I'm like, oh, because you're like so smart, like, please tell me, what would you do? Or like, why do you disagree? Because I don't ever back down, like, if you're going to make a comment on my channel,
life of a YouTuber,
I'm just like, I'm not going to back, like, you make a comment, don't be an idiot. Just like, back up what you say.
Yeah, be prepared.
Yeah, be prepared, because I'm going to have a conversation with you, because I believe emphatically and wholeheartedly in what I do. Mm-hmm. And I'm not scared to have the conversation around it. I know there are a lot of...
it inside and out, right? And you're educated on it.
Exactly.
And you're not afraid to talk about it.
And I'm not going to put something out there that I don't know I can back up. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not in the game of sacrificing myself like that, like, and just getting eviscerated by people online.
Yeah.
So this guy's like telling me this, and I'm like, all right, here's the deal. The title of the video is don't put your money in bonds or CDs, do this instead. It was talking about a whole life insurance policy. Now, granted, I did this video 2 years ago, right? So the world has changed, right? Like, interest rates have gone up. Savings account rates have gone up. Back 2 years ago, if you could have a high yield savings account, you were making maybe 0.75% to 1%. Now you're earning 4.5 to 5,
yes.
Right? Like, so, okay, so that dynamic has changed. But you can't solve long-term problems with short-term thinking. And a lot of people are like, why would I put my money into a whole life policy that will earn me 4.5 to 5% long-term when I could just do that in my savings account and not have any of the short-term downsides? And my answer is like, all right, that's great. And we've just talked about the fact that right now, exactly.
Right now, that's great.
Talk to me 3 years ago. Talk to me 10 years from now. Like, where are we going to be?
So you're defending a position on a video that you made 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And maybe perhaps he just watched it yesterday.
He definitely just watched it yesterday.
So
because this video still gets about 1,000 views a month. And so it's still, and that's a beautiful thing about YouTube, right? Like, is it just keeps going, right? And so like the information and quite frankly, the reason I filmed the video, the environment has changed, right? Because the conversation's changed, but the principle doesn't change, right? Like, because
that was my next question is like, the climate has changed, but did the content remain the same?
100%.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful part. And that's why I love what I do, right? And so like Dave Ramsey, here's what I say to people, and I train a lot of agents, right? And so everybody's like, hey Chris, how do I sell life insurance? How do I get this to make sense and be relevant for people?
Yeah.
And my answer is this, is like, once again, like we talked about, you have to put your money in alignment with your values and your beliefs, right? So I would just say, hey Brian, do you know what an emergency fund is?
Maybe you could ask Jay this time.
Jay? Hey, Jay.
Yes.
Brian's like, why are you always picking on me? I'm just kind of angled and looking at you.
Keep asking me every question.
Man, I get all the tough ones. Do you believe in emergency funds?
Yes.
Do you know what it is?
Absolutely.
Yes. Do you think it's important? So you think you should have 6 months?
At least.
Right?
At
so
least.
if I were to ask most people, do you think they have 6 months of emergency funds saved? You guys look at a lot of people's personal finances.
No way.
Right?
No, we know that's...
What percentage of people do you think have 6 months liquid, accessible, and guaranteed places they can access in case of emergency?
I mean, it's got to be
22%.
No. I was going to say in the single digits, probably percentage-wise.
Okay, so
5% maybe.
Okay, so let's just call it 10% for the sake. Like, so 9 out of 10 people don't have their emergency fund. So when I talk to my agents, and they're like, hey, Chris, how do I do this?
Does that include my credit cards, Chris?
No, no, please don't. But the whole idea here is like, all right, so when you ask, and this is coming back to your question, Brian, about like, why does Dave Ramsey hate it? The answer is, I don't know. Like, it's either, my real answer to that is, I feel like Dave Ramsey has just like been selling the same song for so long that acknowledgement or admission of it would be like catastrophic to his entire brand at this point in time. Okay. And so there's that side of the marketing game and the business game that he's just not able to acquiesce at all or whatever. And so, but at the end of the day, I look at it and I go, all right, if you believe, remember, is your money in alignment with your values and beliefs? And we're talking about financial structure, making sure your foundation is built. So the emergency fund is absolutely a part of that foundation. If you cannot have a solid foundation without the emergency fund built. Agreed?
Yeah, totally. Okay. Absolutely.
So if that's the case, to me, I'm looking at what is the best and most efficient place to save money from a long-term perspective that is liquid, guaranteed, accessible, is performing multiple functions. And so when we look at money inside of a whole life policy, the downside, and we can't ignore the downsides, the downside is that on a short-term basis, you're going to lose 10 to 15% of accessibility to that capital. So if you put in $10,000 a year and that's what you're saving, well, in a savings account, if you were put it in a high-yield savings account, you're going to have access to all 10,000 and you're going to have 5% return, let's call it, which is great, right? Like, but that 5% is taxable.
Right now.
It's taxable, and that's great right now. And a couple of years ago and probably a couple of years from now, that won't be the same, right? But whole life will keep on keeping on, right? It always does it. Mm-hmm. Not to mention, so what whole life does is you're going to have a short-term liquidity crunch. Instead of maybe 10,000, you'll probably have 8,500, right? Accessible. But with that crunch comes benefit. You get life insurance. So if you're like any of us and have families, that's important, right? Mm-hmm. You have living benefits. If you become critically, chronically, or terminally ill, you have access to the death benefit while you're alive. I'm huge on controlling the medical directive in my life, right? Like my father-in-law, the story pretty intimately with us as we've talked about it. My father-in-law was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer on November 4th, 2020. And they gave him 90 days to live. The oncologist said, radiation, chemo doesn't even make sense. There's not much we can do. Maybe we can get him to a year, but his quality of life is going to suck and whatever. Multiple 6 figures out of pocket, alternative treatments. He's still alive playing golf 4 days a week and playing with his kids 3 years later, right? And they gave him 90 days to live. And that's because we didn't give up control of the way that we wanted to handle things, right? And most people don't have that ability, right? But if you have access to capital and you don't have to just handle some of the most important things and elements of our life and just do things the way we are doing them medically because the insurance company tells that that's our only option.
Yeah.
Like it gives you power and that empowerment allows you to show up differently in your own life and for your family and all these things. And so like, that's a big thing to me. It's a self-completing plan. That's like, I always kind of tell people like, hey, Jay, you can save $10,000 a year and that's cool. Like, and you should like, and if you're average American making $100,000 a year and you need 6 months, okay, you need $50,000 in liquid, safe, accessible places. But at the end of the day, what happens if something happens to you in the next 4 years? Like a whole life policy by saving it here is the only financial product in the world that will make sure what you want to happen will happen when you want it to happen, whether you're here to see it or not. Think about the power of that for your family. Like it's mind blowing, right? But then when we look at it and we go, all right, 7 years from now, like when we think about looking long term, 7 years is typically the break even where it's like, all right, your whole life policy is going to be right on par with your bank account. But on top of the bank account, you're going to have the same return as we're getting right now, about 4.5% to 5%. Not sexy. You're not going to blow the socks off of anything. Yep. But that 4.5% to 5% is going to be tax free, right? Compared to a bank account.
Because it's earning within the policy itself.
Yeah. And you're getting dividends and, the guarantees and the dividends in the policy. It grows tax free, tax deferred. You have access to it tax free. Through policy loans and withdrawals up to cost basis, and you have the tax-free death benefit. So from a legacy planning perspective as well, and from a retirement planning perspective, I mean, I could talk for hours about all the different flexibilities of it all. But going back to the Dave Ramsey thing, it's like the problem that I have with Dave Ramsey is he goes, I hate whole life insurance. It's the worst product he's like, you're an idiot if you buy whole life insurance is what Dave Ramsey would tell you. And I've heard him say it 100 times, right? And so the ironic thing, I wish I could get on, Dave, if you're watching this, please give me a call. Like I want to have this conversation with you in a public forum, is if you believe, Dave, which you do, or Dave Ramsey, believe that you need 6 months of emergency fund, where's the most efficient long-term place to keep that emergency fund money? And there's not a place better than whole life insurance. And so, and then the cool part about that is I look at it as it's an emergency fund, but then it also becomes an opportunity fund, right? And that's where I think is what will create real financial freedom for people and real opportunity for people. As you're asking, like, what do we do? What do we do now? There's that phrase, dry powder. You want to have dry powder and available for you when times get tough, when the market gets really, really ugly. Warren Buffett says you want to make money when there's blood in the streets, like that, like all these kind of cliche kind of quotes. But at the end of the day, it's all relevant because what's happening is as the market gets down, as it goes through a down cycle, human behavior becomes more and more pronounced, right? Because desperate times create desperate measures for most people. Mm-hmm. And it's the pendulum thing. Like if they were living way over here, feeling like really comfortable, and then boom, the pendulum swings way over here and they're desperate. Well, that's when asset prices crash. And if they should be here in the middle, and that's where they really belong, well, they overcorrect, and that's where the opportunity is. But the only people that take advantage of the opportunity are the people with the opportunity fund, right?
Yes.
Yes. It's not rocket science, everybody. Like this is just, and the thing is like for me, and I didn't create this. Like I learned this from a guy, and he was like, and I asked him, I'm like, dude, why are you like not trying to get the 10 to 15%? He's like, Chris, that is how broke people think. Like, if you're trying to chase 10% a year, you're playing a losing game that was created. This system is created not to help everybody succeed, because if it was created, think about it this way, common sense, guys, everybody watching this. If our financial system was created for everybody to be successful, 95% of people wouldn't be failing. Mm-hmm. If it were 50-50, we could argue human behavior. 95% the system is designed for people to fail. Like, I'm sorry, like, I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel emphatic about that, obviously. So like, if that's the case, like if it's set up for you to fail, so like, let's use common sense. It's a losing game. Trying to chase 8%, 10% per year and just buying and saving and holding. What are we doing when we do that? We're putting our money into accounts that are tax deferred.
But that's even if people can get there. Mm-hmm. They're not even getting there. Mm-hmm. They're not.
Because they don't believe it.
Well, there's this whole this consumerist mindset that everybody's kind of bought into, or they're buying into.
Yeah.
Not everybody,
yeah.
but there's a lot of people that have bought into this consumerist mindset that it's almost like enslaved everyone to their phones. It's enslaved people to consumerism, to buying like the most expensive thing, even if they can't afford it. Subscription after subscription after subscription. This is the consumerist mindset.
I got to tell you.
So how do you educate people to avoid this at all cost?
It's hard. I'll say for me, when we're moving, doing this shift in life for our, we are launching this real estate investment fund, and we're buying this hotel in the Dominican and doing all these things. And I'm moving my wife and 3 kids there for 12 to 18 months. Right. And I'll go back and forth, but it's, talk about the consumerism, and, we participate in that, obviously.
Well, no, the mindset is a program. Like it's a program that the wealthiest people in this country, they want the consumerist mindset to be programmed into all of its users.
Yeah,
and that's where we're at.
That is true.
And we're all a victim of this at this point, myself included. I mean, to some extent, myself included. And it's like, so how do you snap out of this trance that we're all in and break it? Because in order to get to the point where you really want to, save to invest, or save to, better your family, you've got to snap out of the consumerist mindset first and foremost to get to a point where, okay, I do want to build wealth and a legacy for my family.
Well, I challenge everybody to kind of like do an audit on what you have going on, right? And so I was having this conversation with somebody the other day.
It's not even New Year's,
right?
And we're
totally.
Like
this is 100%. Do an audit, and it's not an audit on. Let me put it this way. It was about 2 weeks ago now, so this is really new. So I'm still working through this, so it might be a little choppy, but I talk a lot about financial efficiency. Right. So what people don't realize is like the whole idea of hey, I earn $100,000. I need to save 10% of my income and try to get a return. And that should be enough. Technically, that's what our system teaches us. It's not true, but that's what people are taught. So my mindset is, if you're saving 10,000 out of that 100 and you're trying to chase a 10% return, what is the potential? You're taking a lot of risk to maybe make $1,000 of interest, right? Of growth, right? So my mindset is, if we focused on being more efficient with the 90,000, we could get the same results with less risk and have more control over the results in our life.
Absolutely.
Right. And so people don't realize I could go and say, hey, do you have 1% of inefficiency in your life? Finances, 100%.
It's probably more like 20.
Right. For most people. So, but the thing is like when we look at it like that, and if we break it down and get simple about it, I could say, all right, it's fair to say what I've seen is 5% is kind of like somebody who's really, really good and on point. 5% is kind of the inefficiency number, whereas like, all right, everybody's got at least that. So on $90,000, 5% is $4,500, right? So if we could just focus on the 5%, that's the equivalent of a 45% rate of return on the 10,000 that we're investing. Think about that. So if we just focused on efficiency, we could get to a better result with less risk and be in 100% control of the results in our life. But people,
that's pretty awesome.
People are not living intentionally for that, right? And so, like, that's
Brian and I are always joking about how, and Chris, you can relate. With 3 kids, it seems like as a dad, generally it seems like we're always kind of in tow.
Totally.
We're just kind of like, whoa, we're like in the wake somewhere, out here, whatever. But it's
we're going to go this way today.
Yeah. Wait, what? I didn't even know about that. Well, I told you about that. I don't know.
100%.
So it's like, how do you get from, living in the wake, constantly being towed, to getting out front and taking control of your finances, taking control of your family, and taking control of this mindset that we're all like in tow all the time.
Yeah.
To get ahead of it.
Yeah. I think it's, I heard this statement one time. I can't remember who said it, but it's like, if you're not living life by your plan, you're living it by somebody else's plan. Right. And it's so true.
Yeah.
If you're not spending your money, if you don't have one of the agents on my team, Sebastian, the other day, and he runs a company where he helps people rebuild credit and build business credit and stuff like that. So he's really brilliant with this stuff. He's the approved guy on YouTube. And he says, if you don't have a plan for every dollar, that dollar has a plan for you. And it's so true, right?
It is.
And the challenge is, so this is the new thing that I've been working on, is like financial efficiency. I used to look at it just like what I was just talking about, like the dollars and cents and the percentages and all that stuff. To me, financial efficiency is actually much more than that. And this is what I've been realizing in all these conversations I've been having about our values and our beliefs and what we want to accomplish and living intentionally to kind of create a life that we want to live. And so it's not that, like, a lot of people like Dave Ramsey will shame you for going out to dinner all the time, or shame you for taking vacations and doing all these things. If you like, so it's not a matter of the good or bad. Is that in alignment with your values and beliefs? And is, from a financial efficiency perspective, it's money is a tool to live the life that we want to live, right? And if we look at it through that lens, and it's like, okay, am I using this tool responsibly to create the life intentionally that I want to live? And most people just, the problem is they don't even know. They couldn't articulate the life that they want to live. They don't know where they want to be 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Or are people just mostly living in the moment?
Well, that's the problem.
Well, for sure.
That's it.
So if you're camped out in the moment,
Sure.
how are you ever going to think about,
You're right.
the long term, or
Exactly.
5 years from now, or 10 years from
Right.
now, or what does this look like when my
100%.
everyone is aging?
And I don't mind that.
Well, TikTok has only exacerbated the instant gratification
God.
culture.
Yes.
We're just scrolling along.
Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
oh, there's another cool one. Oh, another cool one.
And I don't mind
Dopamine,
living in the
dopamine,
moment if living in the moment is intentional, right? Like if living it, like, so here's the deal. It's like, I could be like, all right, is living in the moment, going out to dinner and spending $200 on dinner at a big fancy dinner with my wife. Okay, that's, if I'm doing it every week, that may be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we're, I'll be real. I spend more money going out to eat and doing stuff like that than if people saw the amount of money I spend every month on that. It'd be easy to criticize
That's
me. And call
probably
me
a place
hypocrite,
where
okay?
we could find a lot more efficiency.
Fair. Most people could.
Yeah.
For me, it's not a make or break situation,
Mm-hmm.
right? I realize there's an opportunity cost to that, right? Like for most people. And if times got really tough, that's an area that I would be able to tighten up,
Yep.
But for me, I look at it as like from beyond just the dollars and cents of it. And when we look at it from a values and beliefs perspective, well, I value my marriage. I value not fighting with my wife. I value not having to do dishes. I value, not arguing about who's cleaning the kitchen and the time that we spend with each other and all that stuff. So to me, it's more than just the money being spent. And granted, I understand that's a luxury that, the work that I've done to be able to get to the income that we have is affordable. But rather than, this comes back to our first thing, my greatest need is not to cut back on that. It's to create more cash flow to be able to afford it and create the life that I want to live. Right. And so it's not that going out to eat is bad. What would be bad is if I were not being intentional and if I didn't have a measurement of everything that I had going on. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Or if there was no plan to pay for those meals.
100%.
Well,
right.
And I think, just getting back to Dave Ramsey, I think Dave would say, okay, and I've heard him say this before.
Yeah.
Okay, so some guy calls into the show and he said, I want to buy this, I think it was a Rolls Royce. Should I buy this Rolls Royce? And he says, well, what do you make? What's your income? It's a $300,000 car. What's your income?
Sure.
I hope you don't tell me it's 300,000. And the guy's like, no, actually, I bring in about, 2-3 million a year in my business. And he's like, buy the Rolls Royce. You can afford it. My problem with this, I don't have a problem with anybody owning a Rolls Royce. My problem is if you can't pay for it.
Yeah.
So to relate that to your story about going out to eat, if you can pay for the meals and go out to eat, it's different than, okay, I'm putting every meal on a credit card.
I don't know.
I don't know if I can afford this bill.
I have a problem with highly expensive, hyper cars because at a certain point, it's an homage to you and your success, and what else could you be doing? Like
with that money.
The kids came to me not too long ago and they said, "Hey, Dad, you could buy any supercar that you want. What would you buy?" And I said, "I wouldn't."
Right.
No, Dad, you don't understand. You have all the money in the world. You can buy whatever car you want, whatever supercar you want. Which one would you buy? I'm like, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
No, Dad, maybe you're not understanding. Like, I'm not saying you're really going to go out and buy. I'm like, no, I'm hearing you loud and clear. And my answer is, I wouldn't go spend $500,000 on a car. I would spend $100,000 on a really, really awesome decked out Raptor, F-150 Raptor. I would give some of that to charity, because what are we doing with our money if we're putting $500,000 into a car that's not serving anybody but yourself? And then save the rest, invest it, do something long-term with the rest of that money. And they're just looking at me like a blank stare. I'm like, no, I would not go buy a Bugatti.
I'm going to buy a plaid Tesla and I'll just dust any Bugatti out. Those things are like, I
don't consider those like, those aren't supercars. I'm talking about, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. No, I agree. I think whatever. I don't want to judge anybody for doing their thing, but like, I'm in your camp. Like, I would never spend money on a supercar, but I think it all comes down to
I'd get the Lambo. It'd be black.
Yeah, you would? Okay, you're all right. That's fair. So we'll just ride in his Lambo. That's fine.
I'll pick you guys. Well, one at a time, but I'll pick you guys up.
So, I think...
I'm a car guy. Hey.
Are you? Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I get it. I don't know. I think it's just about intentionality. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of like, I would challenge anybody to be like, all right, do an audit, not a budget, not like the boring, necessary, right? Like, I mean, their budgets are important. And I think understanding, I always kind of tell people, I don't like to look at a budget as a budget because it feels restrictive, right? And I think psychologically, budgets are tough for people. Mm-hmm. I'm an entrepreneur. I look at my budget like a P&L.
On a cash flow basis.
On a cash flow basis,
absolutely.
Right? So I would encourage everybody, if you struggle, if you've thought like, oh, I need to do a budget, or my husband and I, or my wife and I have talked about doing budgets, and we can just never get there because it just feels, it's a hard conversation. Like as a husband, right? I've been there, right? I've had to have the conversation with my wife where I'm like, hey, honey, things are tough. We got to restrict. We got to cut back. You ever tell a really good looking, successful woman that she's got to cut back? It's not a fun conversation.
Yes, I have actually.
It sucks, right? Mm-hmm. So it's another thing, rather than do that, to be like, hey, we got to take a look at our personal P&L and take a look at what's going on right now. The market's shifted. We got all this thing. We're still on a trajectory of growth and we want to do that. So in order, like any business, we got to look at the cash flow and make decisions to make sure that, right, to make sure that long term, we're going in the right direction, right? And so stop looking at your personal life like a personal life and a budget, and start thinking about it like a business and a P&L.
For me, it's budgeting is about finding subscriptions we don't need and getting rid of them. Like figuring out, oh my gosh, we're still paying for that?
Yeah,
gone.
It's a lot. Ironically, so the funny part about that is like a month ago, about 6 months ago, I went through this process. I'm like, I got all these subscriptions. I just need to get rid of them. So I subscribed to this app to solve my problem with subscriptions, right? And so like last month on my Apple thing or my Google store, I got charged for this app for the 6th month in a row that I didn't use to solve the other. And I'm like, damn it, ultimate fail.
Trapped.
Trapped, like, and I'm like, all right, like whatever, I just got to take the time to do it. Yeah. And I'm actually gonna, that's a whole different thing. But, I just think it's when you look at it through the lens of a P&L, and when you're really intentional about where you want to go, it's Simon Sinek talks about start with why thing, right? If you understand everybody knows what they do. Fewer people know how they do it well, and even fewer people understand why they do it. But if you don't really connect with why you're doing anything, you're never going to have the staying power and the success.
It's purpose.
Yeah. It's purpose. And so, like when we look at it like that, if you don't understand 10, 15, 20 years from now what you want your life to look like and what you're working towards, and you can't emotionally connect with that, then doing a budget is pointless, because you're never going to stick to it because there's no why behind it, right? But if you can understand, like, all right, this is our end goal. Now you have something to work towards, and now it's not like I need a budget. It's I need a P&L cash flow statement and a balance sheet to figure out how do I get to my why, right? That's such a different paradigm shift for most people.
It is.
Right? And if you do that, it puts you, simply by being intentional and living your life by design and being intentional about that, it puts you living your plan and not somebody else's. It puts you having a plan for your dollar, not your dollar having a plan for you. It puts you in these situations of control and power, but it's all a matter of like, if you follow, what is it? Like you follow the herd, you're going to get slaughtered like a sheep or whatever the statement is, you know, like, you know, you look around and it's like most people are not living the life that they want to live, yet we're all like, most people listen to the people that are not living the life that they want to live. Right. And it's success is simple. It's not easy. Right. There's a big difference. And you got to be willing to go slow, to go fast. I'm a big believer in that, you know, like, and you asked earlier, what would I do if I were talking to an 18-year-old and I got a 12-year-old who's going to be 18 before I know it, right? And so my mindset behind this is if I could go back and talk to my 18-year-old self, you know, I would say, Chris, you're super talented. You are going to make a lot of money. You're going to be an idiot. You're going to blow a lot of money. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. And here's some things you could do to kind of flatten the curve, right? To not ride the roller coaster quite as much as you've chosen to ride the roller coaster, right? And the things would be save money first. Don't invest. And there's a big difference. Understand the difference between saving and investing. And save money before you invest, but save money with the intention of investing. And do that first. Because when you do that and you come at it from that perspective, you build your financial foundation, you put yourself in the category of being able to be an investor, not a speculator. Because remember, you can go start investing in Bitcoin and you know, buying stocks. But if you do that before you have savings, you're not an investor, you're a speculator.
Well, a good question I think to ask yourself is, can I afford to invest? Can I afford to invest?
Yep.
Which means that, do you have a cushion to fall back on in order to say that you could comfortably invest in this XYZ investment?
Yeah. I mean, that's 100%.
And if you invest in the investment, can you afford to lose it all?
Right. Yeah. One of the questions that we always ask ourselves is, what's the upside? What's the downside? Can I live with the downside?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Worst case scenario. Yeah. Can I live with the worst case scenario? And if the answer is yes, then go for it, you know? And, you know, that's okay. Like, yeah, like, I mean, there are situations like, hey, the downside is, you know, you put $100,000 into something and you could lose it all. And there have been times we've done that, and it happens. Right. Yeah. And there have been times back before I understood this framework.
But can you still fall back on, you know, whatever you've got in savings?
The answer now would be like, I wouldn't get into a situation where I couldn't. And the answer in the past is I did it in my 20s and early 30s and couldn't, and ended up paying the price for it, you know? And I think that's what happens, because once again, if we have a 40-year window, if you go through one 10 to 12 year cycle, if we understand the power of compounding, which is why I say the younger you are, the more risk you can take, is the biggest lie in finance. Because if we have 40 years and we lived this, because we got out of school, you know, and it was the 2003, 2004, it was booming. It was amazing. Like we got into it, and then 2008 happened, right? And then, you know, that came with its own ripple effect of consequences or whatever. And so we had a lost decade, right? I think everybody our age pretty much did.
Yes.
And so if you take 40 years, and because I took all that risk before I was able to, now I took 40 years and I cut it into 30. When is all the money made on a compounding cycle? At the end.
At the end.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So I basically took and I shortened up the greatest earning power potential years. Everybody's like, oh, well, you have the ability to make it back, so you're younger. And like,
yeah, because stuff happens.
Yeah, but I get, but you don't need to do that. Like if you're young, you have the ability to create a plan where you don't need to take that risk. Like you need to start taking risk when you're older and haven't been successful, and you need to start throwing Hail Marys. Like that's when you need to start taking risk. You know what I mean? It's like a football game. Like they don't start just throwing bombs into the end zone from the 50 until it's like clock is ticking and it's going down to zero. And
2 minutes.
You got to, you know, and it is what it is. Before that, you have a game plan.
Speaking of the clock.
So maybe this is probably a good spot to land our conversation today. I always hate ending our conversation with you, because it's like, I want to keep talking about all this stuff.
We can keep going.
And we'll definitely have you on again and
Anytime.
again. And
I love it.
It's been awesome as always. Appreciate you spending a few minutes with us today.
It was so much fun. I actually, we're going to have to do another video in a couple minutes because I want to ask you guys about what's going on. Right. We didn't even get into my questions that I have for you guys.
So I will have a link to that video in our description. So you'll have to head over there and check that out.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah, no, guys, thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun. I mean, I could literally talk about this stuff all day.
Awesome.
Thanks
again, Chris.
Thanks again, Chris.
Yeah.